I think that ASEAN is still a very restrictive services market. ASEAN is going yet to be a single common market in services. They have not much, they have not done much in terms of mutual recognition agreement. Only few areas, 5 areas, they have agreed to mutual recognition agreement, commitments. They're yet to be in a single market. So what will happen that if the ASEAN 10 countries, which we see that if they are not yet integrated services common market, it's very difficult for India to have a market access as a regionally. So you need to always move into the bilateral, which is another difficulties. These are the barriers we always face in the services trade between India and ASEAN. And you can see it starts with commercial presence requirements, need tests, educational certification, acceptance, so on and so forth. I have listed 12. These are which are very popular. These are the basics about the ASEAN-India services and trade investment agreements. Just a quick view is that both the country, both India and ASEAN, they have committed GATS plus commitments. So some, and they have a 3 liberalization schedules. One is for Philippines, which is they have ratified. One is for Indonesia. Recently they have ratified. And another one for the rest, all 8 member states. So these are, and if you look at what are the commitments, so 2 more slides, sure, and I'll finish. Yeah, and I have compared with the GATS, India, Singapore, India, ASEAN, India to Indonesia, and India to Philippines. You can see that commitments in ASEAN, India are more than what in the GATS. So certainly, it starts with business services, communications. These are broad services areas. So what do I conclude from this, even though we have made a series of commitments under ASEAN India services and investment agreements, until we implement, we may not be able to know what is the barriers in their market, in the reality. Let's come to the investment, because investments is directly linked with the services trade. Presently, between the India and ASEAN, it is a investment flow coming from ASEAN countries, mainly Singapore. Between them, the bilateral investments are almost saturated. It's not picking up. Probably the services trade implementation will have an effect on investment flow. Again, some of the services sectors which are preferred destinations for FDI between India and ASEAN, like construction services, wholesale, retail, restaurants, and transportation, storage, and communications. So it is purely, if you look at the composition about the service investment flow between the two, services sectors are the preferred destinations. But these will change completely once the investment agreements come in place. And why I am so optimistic, if you look at the bilateral prospects and India's global contribution to the services, about 5%, global rank in 5th, and next to is in Singapore, rest are below 20 or below 30. So this means that this variation will be there. So if we encourage our services and investments agreement to come in place, so obviously this will make huge change, because services will be India's net services exporters in education, health, IT, and IT-enabled services. So this will be making more trade between the services, and also it will attract the investments. Let's come to, if you look at the Korea, China, Japan, we have several revealed comparative advantage estimation. This also indicates that a complementarities in bigger pictures, like in Asia-Pacific regions. And RCEP, the latest Auckland discussions, which is indicated to us, that is Mode 4 for the movement of natural persons. This has been agreed. So this is also a great achievement, I think, in the services that is India looking for. The last slides, what that we can conclude or we can say about where India could gain for Asia Pacific or Indo-Pacifics. India's interest will be, as I said, is computer and related services, professional services, other business services, but we need to move only those areas where we have less barriers. We do more commitments when the barriers are less. It is easy to start the business. Some of the areas where, like as I said, that travel services, tourism services, education services, health services, these are the India can provide the niche technology. And so this, if we start implementing the services agreement, this will have a huge impact, on the regions. And the last slide, I have exceeded my time, that's concluding slides. Clearly that growing ASEAN in the services trade and it will certainly strengthen the multilateralism, regionalism through ASEAN and India. And we need to do some collective cooperations, collective work, and integration of services is very important. We cannot do just ASEAN, India in a single, on silos. It needs to be linked up. And how do you do it? We need to see ASEAN Economic Community Target 2025 and India's interest. I have outlined 4 or 5 points. I'm not going to read them out because of the lack of time. But there are complementarities where if India wants, they can take more liberalization. So also ASEAN. And particularly when we talk about the global value chains, these GVCs will certainly bring more services trade, new types of services trade, investments. We need to also look at the regulatory cooperation. Sometimes you don't commit, but if you do a cooperation at the regulatory level, educational services or health services, those who are regulators, that can give you, sort of a bottom-up approach to more trade comfortable. Then last 2 points, which I said, that coordination among professional bodies. There is no such coordination is happening between professional bodies which are looking at the mutual recognitions of services agreements between India and ASEAN, or maybe in the Asia-Pacific regions where we can learn more from exchange of knowledge and know-hows. Collective development of regulation, regulatory standards, sharing of knowledge, those are also equally important. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your very detailed introduction of Indian picture of trade in services, in particular based upon your excellent quantitative analysis. So the next speaker is Professor Gary Falk from New Zealand. Please, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you indeed, and thank you to those who are responsible for inviting me here today. I take a very different approach to the topic, and want to start by the assertion that services are often embodied in goods, and we have to turn away from thinking of services as a separate component of trade. The role of services is in economic integration, not in access to the border for particular kinds of services like business services, tourism, financial services, and so on. Economic integration, not barriers at the border. The idea that there is a distinction to be made between trade and behind the borders things is wrong. Going all the way back in the history of GATT, it was very soon after the beginning of concern with tariffs that attention started to focus on other barriers to trade. Export subsidies being one of the first in the 1950s, 60, 70 years ago. Subsidies on production next, sanitary and phytosanitary standards and technical barriers to trade, and the whole role of government procurement. Those were all very familiar in GATT. The topic was always economic integration, not tariffs and barriers at the border to trade. It's called trade simply because that is the term which was used in the way in which the economic discipline developed. The economics of trade was always concerned with the interactions between different economies, but it was not concerned with the movement of goods from one country to another. The context for discussing services and economic integration is less likely to be analogous to those used for goods than it is to be part of the process of regulatory cooperation. The issue is, how do we reconcile policy space, in some sense, for decisions about things like appropriate levels of consumer safety with the desirability of making the greatest possible efficiency in the use of the resources in the region as a whole. And that is the way in which we should think about the role of services in economic integration, because the role of services is all of the services in the economy, not those which happen to be part of Mode 1 or Mode 2 or even Mode 4. The way forward is much more likely to be direct contact among the regulatory authorities of different economies than it is to be by negotiation among trade officials. You'd start with a very general notion, the notion that regulatory requirements should be as little restrictive to trade to trade in the goods from other economies relative to the way in which one regulates activities in the domestic economy itself. One would start with the proposition of making that difference as little as possible, but the core is really to change the approach of regulatory authorities. One simply has to get regulatory authorities who are used to thinking of themselves as putting barriers in the way of traders in the interests of things like consumer safety, and getting them to think much more in terms of the good for the region as a whole, rather than the narrow concerns about particular kinds of goods. Above all, one should avoid fruitless debate about trade versus national sovereignty and keep the focus on the issues of making sure that policy is as effective as possible for the objectives which it is stated, and which has as little discrimination between production of the national economy and the goods coming from overseas. Now, that doesn't deal with all trade in services, and there are issues around tourism and so on. Those points do have to be taken into technical discussions and being built into mutual recognition agreements. But above all, the emphasis should be in promoting the right sense of cooperation among regulatory authorities, rather than simply imposing new sorts of rules. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Hawke, for in particular having highlighted the importance of regulatory reform in service sector liberalization. So the next speaker is Ms. Prakash from AREA. Please. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Haraka-san. I'll use a PowerPoint presentation, and today I present an East Asian view of trade and services, how the East Asia region is faring in this particular area of trade. What is the prognosis for the East Asia Pacific region? What are the promising sectors in trade and services? And what sort of policies are required to fulfill these promises for the region? And very brief look on the situation of services in RCEP and the important policy areas emerging both for the region as well as in the global context. As we have known for some while, that services trade has been far more resilient than trade in goods, even though the volume of trade in goods has been much more than that of services. It is the resiliency inbuilt in this sort of trade that is something that Asia Pacific needs to take a closer look at, and why other parts of the world are doing this better, or maybe not so better in some sectors than Asia Pacific. This is a goods and services trade situation in ASEAN plus 6, and we are not doing very badly, even though Asia Pacific has been termed as the factory of the world. We are doing pretty well in services sector also. ASEAN 10 has, the services sector comprises literally one-fourth of its total, one-fourth of the goods trade. China almost 1/10, India and New Zealand roughly about half, South Korea is 1/5. So we are slightly better off than we would have suspected ourselves not to be. But the question is the region advanced enough in services trade as compared to rest of the world? Prima facie, from the previous slide, the answer would be yes. Most economies have roughly about 50% of their economy in services. But when compared to other economies, we look to be slightly behind. The EU 28, USA, even Russia is at a 56%. And so there is a huge margin for improvement and a huge scope for increasing our services contribution in our total trade. I'll quickly come to this slide, which is basically a comparative view of the trade in services. In the next few years, when growth will likely slow down, consumption will become very important driver for emerging economies in Asia Pacific to drive their growth. Therefore, exports of services will be important, but imports will be equally important. And besides consumption of, this is especially true for emerging economies, besides consumption, political leadership, policies on inflation, social policies will be very important in the next few years. Also, we need to see what is the sectoral breakup of the services export. First, we take ASEAN. As we know, travel and tourism comprises the the largest part of the sectoral composition. Other business services too, but of course, Singapore has a far more diversified picture here. But as we would have known intuitively or even by knowledge, travel and tourism is the largest component. In ASEAN plus 6 and some other bigger economies, this is where our comparative view, the Asia Pacific's comparative view emerges more clearly. And as we can see, USA, Germany, United Kingdom, these have a far more diversified services trade than what we practice in ASEAN. But of course, some of the countries in Asia Pacific, including India, are doing pretty well in terms of diversification, and ASEAN may try to get its services exports far more diversified than what it currently is. This is a very important slide. This is a very important slide for the Asia Pacific region.